So if you go to ygrowglobal.com, we are a group of agents that like to get together and help each other out. So if you go to ygrowglobal.com, we got our resource pages for you to have information on. You can go and plug and play. We got our events calendar, all kinds of things about what we do, and some of the quick recordings that we've done here. We also, you can go down here to this page right here and click this button, and it'll take you to our past recordings on YouTube. And lots of value there. I constantly send people to our past recordings that can't make it to the live events because a lot of agents can't. They can't get away, and so they come to our recordings and hear it. So we've got a great little topic today that we wanted to go over. We like these open forums where people can provide what they're doing, can share what's working for them. It's been a lot of fun for us. And to hear different ideas coming out of it, everybody's going, wait a minute, I got a new nugget out of today. So today we want to talk about, and we've had people ask about this, is as you're going through and talking to buyers and sellers and getting prepared, you're pulling statistics, you're pulling information. And our job as a top real estate agent in the industry is to know what's going on. You have to know what's happening, because the number one question you get from buyers and sellers is, what's the market doing? You even get that from your friends, don't you? They'll always come, hey, what's the market doing? How's real estate going? So having the knowledge of what's going on in your area is key. Even in your area, in your state, and even nationwide is good to know, because that can help out in bringing context. Because sometimes your local area may not be doing so hot, but some areas are, and vice versa. Like I know we were talking to one of our agents, and she's in Chicago, Illinois, and she says they still have limited inventory, and they're still fighting for getting deals done. But other areas have tons of inventory. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to take information and leverage it. Because when you're going into a listing appointment or you're talking with a buyer, if you know more about what's going on than anybody else, then you've got a light years ahead benefit in getting them information, closing them, helping them make an informed decision. And you can also leverage it in negotiations. So when you have someone that's submitting an offer or dealing with a buyer submitting an offer to a seller or vice versa, if you know the statistics in the area, you can leverage that in working that deal out. So, one of them is days on the market, right? That's a classic one we've used forever, is days on the market. And so when you have a home that just comes on the market, it usually gets a lot of quick activity. And the reason is because it's brand new and fresh. Someone that may be looking for something, they want to see the new stuff that comes up. But as it gets older and older and older on the market, then you start having situations where people are going, what's wrong with that house? Now, it could be it's overpriced. Now, most of the time we're seeing a lot of overpriced homes right now, but it could also be other things. It could also be condition or location or things like that. So people start looking closer at a property that's been on the market a long time. So days on the market are critical to be able to talk to about client, especially if you're going into a listing and you have other listings in the neighborhood or the area, and a lot of them are sitting on the market. You need to talk to the seller about, hey, this is what's on the market. This is how long they've been on the market. This is the price range they've been on the market. They're overpriced. Let's not do that. Let's do something different, right? So I've got a whole list of different statistics that we can talk about, or different things that you should check on. But let's have you pipe in on what are some of the numbers that you're looking at. Are you looking at the inventory levels, expired withdrawals? What are something that catches your attention? Tony, what do you do in your world? When you're analyzing property or going for a listing appointment or working with sellers, what's the hot numbers that you're looking at?
Well, I look for days on market, and I think it's important to see how quick things are turning around, in the area. And then I look past months to see what the trends are doing. So days on market's real important. I look to see expireds, I
Hmm.
look to see withdrawals. I look to see, are people are they deciding to come off the market? And that's a good phone call, just have a discussion, talk to them about what their experience was when they were trying to sell their house. And most of the time, people that withdraw, they're going to talk to you.
Hmm.
They're going to tell you, here's what we experienced. And there's just good opportunities there. So days on market's just super important, in what we do.
So, what do you do with days on the market? Do you do anything different with days on the market than other people do?
I don't know that. uh, we take days on market to see, where we are, in comparison to what others are doing. And, normally our days on market are less than 30 days.
Yep.
And if we see that there's those that are going, past 40, 45 days, uh, our competitors, we're going to talk to people about that. And there's got to be a reason. It's going to be price or condition. Location, in the Atlanta market, everybody's in a pretty good location on this side of town anyway. And so we're going to look at condition and price. We're closing one, essentially right this hour that is a situation where the people literally destroyed the house and then they still wanted, highest price they could possibly get. And finally, I was able to talk them into getting it appraised. And when the appraiser came out, he gave them a fair market value if the house were fixed. I mean, they had people falling through the ceilings that were never repaired. The siding was in terrible condition, a lot of dry rot on the trim. And he wrote up in the appraisal, if these things were done, this is the price that you should get. Well, they wanted that price anyway. And I just had to be, real straightforward with them and say, it's just not going to happen. And I tell them right up front, I said, if you have an agent that I'm competing with and they want to tell you they can sell it for that, you need to think twice about that because you'll be calling me back again in about 90 days. And, let's get this thing sold. So we have one going to closing this morning, and they did not fix it up, but they decided to come down to a price that was in line, with what we thought it should be. And we're still able to pick up an additional $10,000 for them because it was low enough where we could get some, different offers coming in at the same time. So we had multiple offers come in. They were able to get more on the price, and they did not have to do the repairs. So that all worked out real well. So you just have to kind of, talk them through the process of condition and price.
Yep. So it's just leveraging numbers and statistics. Another thing is inventory levels. So you're looking at what the inventory level is in your local market, right, or in that local area.
Right.
So Kelly Jackson, I see Kelly Jackson on here.
I am, and I'm on location, so I don't know what this big haze is. It must be the
That's
lighting.
okay. So we're talking about some statistics that people use in real estate. What are some statistics that you use when you're talking to your buyers and sellers, or just to get informed on the market on what the market's doing?
I would say I look at list to sold ratios, so the list price versus what they're selling for, because that's going to be important if things are selling, and that's going to be important to a buyer or a seller, because
Mm-hmm.
let's say things are selling at 97% of list price, and your buyer says, "Oh, I want to go in and I want to come in low and I want to ask for closing costs." You can use the data to set the market straight or set the record straight. And same with the
Right.
seller, with letting them know, because there's sellers that want to test the water and put the price high so they can leave room for negotiating, which is
Right.
that strategy isn't necessarily working. But if we can use that data to show them, hey, if we listed this, this is the range you can expect. And oh, by the way, my ratio is better than. the ratio that is, you know, the other realtors are doing in the area. So you can even use that as leverage to win a listing. Um,
Yeah, it's good you
no, go
said
ahead.
that because there are agents that have been in business a long time, and they'll say my days on the market are less than the competitors, or my list to sold ratio is better than the competitors. They're using that to win listings.
Yes, yes. So that's a big one that we use. Also, we're looking at, because those of us that have been around for a long time know that, especially if you're in a declining market, that you can list at what the last person sold for and you're not getting it because the market's declining. And so you end up chasing the market throughout the time that you have the listing. And so using like the expired data, what
Mhm.
didn't sell, what didn't work, is better in those declining markets than using what just sold and then you're wondering like, why isn't mine selling? Because the market's declining. So so there's, I mean, there's a number of, and we have to know how the inventory is trending. And I know you mentioned that before, but that's a huge one because there was this gap in in our area anyway, where we didn't have enough houses at one point to accommodate the market, and now there's too many. And so that explains the increased market times. It explains why people aren't getting, because all of our sellers, they want to take us back to 2022, and all of our buyers want to take us back to 2009. And so we can use that data to bring them all back to reality, because that's really what it's taking right now to have that really, that heart to heart conversation. I sat with a lady that told me she wanted basically 20% more than the market, and I'm not listing her house. Uh, she can get someone else to do it, and I'll catch her on the flip side
Right?
when she's gotten real. But I'm not going to take that on. It was a whole 20% above the market, and I asked her, like, would you pay that much for it? And she,
That's a good question to ask.
but anyway, she gave me some story about how she's on God's schedule and not the market. So, and I didn't tell her because we were really just in the early stages of like getting a contractor to do some work. But I wanted to say that buyer is probably one of God's children as well.
That's
So
right.
And that buyer has a godly, fearful,
Yeah.
God-fearing agent like us who going to protect them like
Yeah.
crazy. So
right,
yeah, very
that's
much so.
right.
So
So
bring
Well,
them back to
well,
reality.
Well, Kelly, one thing that you kind of touched on is absorption rate, is taking a look in a community or an area and say, okay, how many homes are sold each month in this area? How many are on the market right now? How long will it take to sell the current homes in that market? I know Kim a few months ago had a condo, and there were, I think, 5 or 6 different listings in that community, but the absorption rate was one sale a month. That's so one a month would sell, and there were 5 or 6 on the market. How long is it going to take you to get this sold? And if 2 are coming on the market every month, that's you're going to chase out. So where do you want to be price wise in that group? Do you want to be on the high end and wait longer? Do you want to be on the low end? That kind of thing. So all of that is leverage to be able to help get the right pricing. Like you said, Kelly, if it's way overpriced, why would you even take it? Because now you're wasting your time, you're hurting your reputation, that kind of thing.
And
yes,
and and if you do take it, which at time I do, I will tell them this. Here's what we're going to do. Normally, it would take about 6 months to move it, but since we are 20% over, above price, we will need another year, because during this time you're going to, the market gonna correct, and we are going to move with the market, aren't we, Mr. Campbell? Kind of thing, like talking to them, and we're gonna move down. So that's no big deal. I'll take it, but based on what you want, it's going to take much longer. And then if it sit on the market for a long time, the price will go down even further. So when I started out with that listing that Rob was mentioning, I knew there was only 3 homes at the time when I listed it, okay? And I told him exactly that, Kelly. I said, listen, right now we need to be listing at 470. And guess how much they were owning, guys? 480. Imagine that kind of conversation. Everybody was listing their home at 510, 515. And I'm like, if you list your home at 515, and I show them the come, I show them everything, the market, the absorption rate and everything. I said, no worries. I will tell you where you might be ending up. I hope for more, but you're gonna be right around 470. And I say, Miss Kim, we owe 480. I'm like, I know. You just bought it like 3 years ago. Okay. And here's what the market, would you like me to tell you the truth, or would you like, me to tell you what you want to hear? Which one would you want me to tell you? And the wife said,
Right.
tell the truth, I'm pregnant. So ask them, would you like me to tell you the truth, or would you like me to tell you what you want to hear? What you want to hear is that we put on at 530 and it will sell just like that. Now, you like that? The reality is it will be selling right around 470, 480. And like, oh my God, no, no, no. Nobody in here selling at that price, Miss Kim. And I said, well, nothing been sold the past 6 months, period. And they go like, oh, you get it? I'm like, so we'll be the first one that will sell it right around the price, or we will stay with the rest of them while they were waiting with that 3 listing ahead, right? There were 5 more coming another 2 months. 5. So we talk about how many? 8 total. And by that time, they were like, okay, 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 what do we do? So I had to go and talk to corporate, because it's corporate relocation, right? So I had to write like dissertation to the people, explaining the market, explaining the absorption rate, explaining, where everything is, because we not only helping our seller, but talking to their company to help them out with some loss that they have to bring. And they have to bring 40 grand to the closing
And
table.
and absorption rate is also important in terms of when you're picking a farm.
Yes.
And a lot of times people just blindly say, I'm going to pick this farm. But if you can find out how many properties actually sold, is there a dominant agent already spending a bunch of money in this community? And how much is it going to cost me to be able to service these people for 12 to 18 months so that I can develop the reputation in it? And so it's important to look at those numbers and make sure it's worth that, it's worth the squeeze, that lemon that you're squeezing, far as that, because
The
we
juice
all
is
love.
worth squeezing.
Right.
So absorption rate is a huge one, I would say.
So
Like
are y'all
in our neighborhood right now, there's 100 homes. The absorption rate in here is like 1 or 2 a year. You think I'm gonna market
Hmm.
it? That's like
Yeah,
I'm like way too busy for 1 or 2 a year. That they have the aunt, the uncle, the mother is an agent already too. Chances are.
right. And
So
and
nope.
in that situation where you have the overpriced listing, one of the things that we've done is said, hey, if you don't get this many showings in this period of time, so this week or 2 weeks, or if you don't get this many offers, then we're going to go down, and we have a preset amount that we're going down, because
Mhm.
people have selective amnesia when you go back to them and they're like, what? I didn't say that. So it's good to even get those price reductions signed off on up front
Up
as
front?
you're listing the
Yes.
property.
That's right there. Say that
I
one
totally agree
more
with that.
time, Coach Kelly, because most people have no idea what you just said and what it meant and how to go about doing just that, doing the listing agreement, because it's very important. So, Coach Kelly, give them a little, mini script in the listing agreement, how to do that, or addendum. How do you
So
use
yeah,
that?
So really just saying, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I understand that you want to get as much money as possible out of the property, but the reality is here's the numbers. And so we're going to try it at your price. And what we're going to do if you don't get 10 showings in the first 2 weeks, and I'm using that, I'm going to actually look at data and see what's a realistic number for how many showings they should get.
Right.
If you don't get 10 showings in the next 2 weeks, or if you get no offers, we're going to need to make a price move. And I'm going to suggest that we move it in increments so that it can show up well on the portals and line up better. So I'm not going for a $2,000 or $3,000 price move. We're talking about percentages of maybe it's 3% down from maybe it's 5%. It depends on where we are. And what we can do right now so that there's no missteps done, we're going to sign the extension, or we're going to sign the price reduction right now. And I'm not going to put it in until this one's going to be dated for 2 weeks out. This one's going to be dated for the next 2 weeks. I'm not going to put them into the system until then, but I'll already have them so I don't have to come back to you getting signatures every 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Very
And
cool,
that's
Coach
it, man.
Kelly.
And I'm sliding
Yes.
those papers to them because otherwise it doesn't make sense, because it's our job to tell people that their price is wrong, that they're
Right.
not in line with the market. And a lot of agents miss that, or they're afraid they're going to get fired. But you're really just kind of wasting time.
Well, a big mistake that agents make is they say, this is my opinion of what the value is. You don't ever want to say it's your opinion.
No.
You want to look at the numbers. This is what the numbers say, right? This is what the market says the value is.
Yep. Because, and that's when, in this market like this, we are going to see the people who will learn how to communicate, to seller and buyer. It's very much like last night I was, long story short, the weekend I had family live celebration with my brother. So I had to put the fire out of, my brother just got buried, and that was like domestic issue, right? So I have to teach people how to communicate. I say, here's how my agent communicate to the seller. We all have to learn to communicate, and so I have to teach everybody to learn to communicate to like one another, because the loss is there and everybody's in pain and everybody just not knowing how to communicate to each other. I'm like, real estate, we all have to learn to communicate. And family, we still have to learn to communicate. As a mother, you have to learn to communicate to your daughter. Same thing in real estate. There's no difference. You have to learn to communicate to your seller and to your buyer, to the lender, what to say, what not to say, and when, because those are very crucial. They will make and break the deal. Just like when, and you also have to build a reputation of your words, because it have to be impeccable with your words. For example, if my client knew I couldn't get the price of whatever, if we put an offer in, they know that I did my very best. You see what I'm saying? They all know. I mean, I have a raving client right now that she just bought $1 million home, and she bought another like $200,000 investment home, and now we just put an offer in like $1 million. The investment property right here, right now. I just got done with a contract. She said, Kim, what I love about you is that your words are impeccable. I trust you just like that. The other agent, I deal with so many agents here in Atlanta. She said she's been working on this like, 10, 15 years. But she said ever since she's working with me, she see how I am, because I went above. I got them so much more money that they didn't even ask. Let's just say they were asking just $10,000 closing costs. But behind the scene, I already went for 30. I'll give you an example. And they want 10, I don't go 10. I say, what, see what I can do, right? And I went to war at 30. And I went out to all the way to 15. And when I deliver back to them, I got them 15. And I'm like, oh, you did what? And that is the kind of communication. All because I know numbers, I know market data, and I use all that to talk to the other agent, right? So you don't just talk to your seller and your buyer, you talk to the agent that you're dealing with. You have to teach and educate the other agent, just like the other one. She just, I told her, I'm like, that investment property of yours, you will not move more than 800, 830. And she listed at 930, right? We put an offer in. She kicked it out. She's like, too low, Kim. I don't want it anymore. I said, no big deal. We went on, put that $1 million offer, and we just got accepted. And now she texts me back, and I kid you not. She go, Kim, I took your word. Is 8:50 work? She listened 9:30, right? And I'm saying, thank you, guys, but I will talk to them. But because we just put, we are under contract for another property, and she was like, what? You see, without proper communication to your seller, to your buyer, to the agent, that's what happened. And now she's like, we're willing to move $100,000. I said, I was telling you that, but you didn't listen to me. Now she's coming back a little late. See, communication, data market, because I know the market, I know the data, so therefore I know how to communicate to her and to my buyer. Like, let's just walk out. There's another one that's better. And there
So
was.
one of I think that really would help is just the strategy of pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Two things that I work on every listing is, if I see someone and it says, let's say 799, 999, I tell my seller, I'll say, you don't want to do that. What you want to do is price it in an increment on how people are searching. If someone's looking, between 750 and 800, they're going to see that house. But if they look from 800 to 850, they're not going to see it, because you've got it priced at 799. You're going to miss that buyer by $1,000 while they're doing their searches on the internet. So let's price it at an even 800 or an even 790. Keep it on an increment of where the search is, and you're going to pick up more, more prospects along those lines. The second thing that I do on every listing is when I do a net sheet, I build in negotiations in my net.
Mm-hmm.
I'll show them, this is your payoff on your mortgage. Do you have a equity line of credit or a second mortgage? This is your listing representation commission or compensation. This is what we could do on buyer compensation, but that's not anything that I advertise. We wait to see what it is in the offer. And then we go down through there. But one line that I have in there is negotiation. Let's say I have a $500,000 listing. I'm going to put $10,000 worth of negotiation in parentheses. And in those parentheses out to the side, it says, we don't disclose this to anyone. Okay. This is between us as your representative on the listing side and you as the seller. But when that offer comes in, we have something to work with. We've got price that we can work with, or we've got closing. And then I talk to him about, why people want closing costs. Because a buyer has to pay it all up front on top of their down payment if they pay for it, but they can build it back into the price. Then when an offer comes in, okay, I've got that net sheet. When an offer comes in, I've already got something built in there to work with.
Yep.
Because if you give them a bottom line with no negotiation and they try to stick to that number, you'll never get anything worked out. But have some room to work with. And then when I have that net sheet, I have them sign off on it and date it. I sign off on it and date it. I take a picture of it, put it in my files, on my phone, and then I give them the hard copy. And I'll say, you keep this and I'm going to keep mine. And when that offer comes in, we're going to pull our net sheet back out and see how that offer looks on the net sheet as well. And 9 times out of 10, if I'm dealing with a good offer, it's going to work out because I've already got negotiations built in there. So two things: how you price it, round it to a $10,000 or a $5,000 number, depending on price range. But don't do the $9.99 Walmart special, that type of stuff, because you'll lose them or they won't find you. And then also do a net sheet that's got some negotiations built in.
Handling expectations. That's huge. Because
Yeah,
you gave them time to marinate in their head, so when the offer does come in, you've already got them down the right path.
right, right.
Sometimes if you hit them at the last minute and they have to think about it at the last minute, then it doesn't sit well in their brain.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm dealing with a deal right now, this one that's closing where no one would talk to each other because it was a divorce. They tore the house up and they went through a divorce. And once I, got to work with the people, I realized why they were going through a divorce. But 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 anyway, in all that, one of the things that I got from the judge, through the divorce, a judge put an order in that said, you can put this house on the market. In other words, he says, I want it sold in 30 days. And he put in there every week come down 5%. And he built in the pricing. Now we
Yep.
sold it immediately, okay, because we priced it right. But he built in, he had already told this couple, we're going to sell this house in a month's time. And he put orders in there that said, reduce it 5% every week until it sells. And they knew it was coming. So they took that first offer that came along.
Yeah. Well, and the judge was smart because he knew they weren't going to agree on anything.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's the reason I'm not at the closing right now,
Yeah,
because they're fighting with each other.
I'm sure. Oh, crazy stuff. The fun stuff of real estate, right?
I'd love to
So,
service it, but I'm not going to be there and be part of that one.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
but
wow.
yeah,
So
that's that.
how about different areas? Differ in pricing and absorption rate and days on the market, because one area may be hot and the other one's not. Do y'all see that in some areas?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're seeing that. I was just doing that this morning with somebody who has had a listing in a particular neighborhood for 9 months and it's been active. That's been with
Yeah.
with a different agent. And I just had a conversation. She actually called me. Yeah, remember, you always have to tread carefully because it is still listed with another agent. But she wanted my advice. What can we do to sell this? And I was one of the two agents she called originally that was recommended to her. And of course, she went with the other agent, and well, you got the predictable result. They didn't use me, so that's why the house hasn't sold yet.
Right.
However, in going over it, I mean, the house is painted pink. Okay, that's the first thing.
Right.
It's the outside is pink. It's a drive under garage. Remember, guys, drive under garages always take longer to sell.
Yep.
There's a full flight of steps. No matter how you get in the house, you're gonna have to pull your groceries up. Full flights of steps, front, back, doesn't matter. And of the last in the elementary school district, of the last 7 sales, there's been 7 sales in the last 60 days. So just marinate on that for a minute. 7 sales in the last 60 days. 6 of 7 were new construction. Built. And now, granted, they're not as big. I mean, this house is 3,700 square feet. They're not near as big. They're like 22, 25, 26. She has the biggest house on the market for the price, but it's pink and it's a drive under garage and it's in a country club that went under. So that's no longer a country club. So, there's a whole bunch of in not great schools. So I mean there's a whole bunch of things, but there's a lot of homes. There's 20 homes for sale right now between her and a 50K range. And so the conversation is not only doing all these other things in your house, but you have to have one of the top 3 best houses available. And when you look at all these pictures, I sent her all 20 that was available, and it's kind of that same conversation. Which one would you pick? And I said, the buyers right now, a house of her vintage, we have very much age discrimination. I think you really need to be talking to your sellers about that. There are a lot of buyers out there that won't look at anything that's older than 2010, 2005, 2000. That doesn't mean those older homes are not good homes. They're actually probably better homes. But, there's a impression in the market that the newer homes are better, or there's that excitement about buying new. And there's also the competition with the builders right now. So from the resales, the builders, some of the builders are offering just bonkers price. I just closed one with Lennar. Guys, look up Lennar Homes right now. They're offering crazy bonuses. Check this out. Where my daughter goes to college at, I just sold a house to an investor, brand new, 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath townhome, brand new, with a 2-car garage for $200,000, marked and an appraised at 260.
Good
Okay,
grief.
and I got a 3% commission and a $7,500 broker bonus on a $200,000 house, guys. It was a $13,000 commission. And it was another EXP agent from another state that I sold it to, so I had to give a referral. But crap, I mean, that was easy peasy. And I have his partner bots closing next week on the same property, in the same area. So there's opportunities out there if you guys look look for those opportunities. But you also, for your resale sellers, you really need to look at the new construction that's in your area. What is actually selling? And in that area, it's only new construction. I mean, that's literally, and so you're going to have to either make your house look like the new construction or price it so
Right.
low that you're going to have to show why. And there are programs available. Look at your lending programs that are out there available to try to help. There are, like on that particular house, 100% financing is available
Mhm.
because it's a minority majority census tract. But still, you're gonna have to figure out how to help your sellers with that. So it has to be the top three in the market, top three best homes for the price point, and then making sure it's pricing, because it's either price or condition, y'all.
Mhm.
That's really what it comes, price or condition, and then new construction. And if you have a lot of new construction, I mean, there are some areas literally, up in the Brazelton area and the Houston area, more than 50% of the homes are new and any on most price ranges. So you look at most homes, if they're not new, they're sitting 6 months on the market. Doesn't matter if they're good homes, they're
Mhm.
just sitting because some of those builders give 20K away. They give you a 2% interest rate or a 1% interest rate on some of them that are out there. So those are some things, that you're looking at. And then sometimes you have to be patient too. I have one that just went under contract, 7 days left in the listing. It's been 4 or 5 months because that area, it's the very high end of a price range of an average school district. Not bad, just average, but 600 and something thousand dollars is really high for that area. And we finally lowered it to 590, and we got a contract within a week after doing that. But it took 130 days, 140 days, because they were a little stubborn. We started at 610. I told them to start at 6. They didn't want to start at 6. We sat at 610 for like 60 days. Then we finally got them lowered to 6. Um, so there's just all the active listings in that area were over 100 days on the market for that price point. From that, say, 575 to 625 price point, where you're sitting in an average area that's maybe 400,000,
Yeah.
for a normal house in that school district. So, looking at all those things, and I'm just trying to be patient
Well,
on and have your sellers, and make sure you communicate with your sellers, because I think that's part of it. Is you you know you pick up listings from other agents that they may be looking because there's a lack of communication. So, as I think Kelly was talking about, communicating, making sure you're texting, making sure, because it is going to take a little bit longer. Almost, look at your areas. Most areas are taking 45, 50 days now. It's not the 20 days that we
Mhm.
used to have, or my area used to be 8 days at the height, 7 days on the market. Certain neighborhoods are still going to go really fast, but you want to look at all of those things. So condition and pricing and new construction will be
That's a
things
good
things to look
point.
at, and
Yeah,
be
because
the
Well, right.
expert on that.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, because if you're just analyzing a large community and there's new construction nearby, you got to point out, hey, you have brand new competition. It's not just the homes in your area now; it's now the new construction down the street, which puts a damper on the absorption rate, big time.
Right.
Especially if they're
And
offering
they're not
special deals.
always, Rob. They're not always, and just because you're in a good school district, I had one in the Brookwood School District, top 35 school in the state. And you would think that only people were looking at that. They're not. They were looking at Grayson. They were looking at Loganville. They were looking all over the place. It wasn't just exclusively. So the school district, while it was important, it did not become the ultimate selling feature like it usually is. A lot of times that school district is the ultimate selling feature for that particular home, for that particular area. but it wasn't, and it didn't end up being that way. So be aware that that your buyers, even if you're in a top school district, they may be looking at other top school districts, or may be willing to go to a 6 out of 10 instead of an 8 out of 10. You may have a house in an 8 out of 10 school district, and they may be okay with going to the 6 out of 10 school district to get a nicer house.
Mhm.
Just be aware that it's not always that, and explain that to your sellers, because your sellers paid extra money for for their house to be in that school district, that top school district. Sometimes, I know my school district is easily $100,000 higher than the other part of Snellville. Easy
Mhm.
for the same house, 100, 150,000, sometimes even more for an identical house. But you're gonna have to explain that it's not always that people are going to continue to look around at other areas
Mhm.
potentially.
So have y'all seen a rise in sellers taking their homes off the market? I keep hearing this happening all across the country where sellers are just saying, look, I can't get my price. I'm just taking myself out of the market for now. Have y'all seen that in real
Yeah,
time
I've lost 2 listings this year. Yes,
for
out
that?
out a
Yep.
little bit further out, but they did buy in that, like, they were in the area where everything was new construction, Brazelton,
Mhm.
Houston, nice homes. In one case, they paid 589 for it, and the builder for that same house was now selling at 540 with incentives. You
Yeah.
can't. What are you going to do? The options that we were getting, and maybe this is. I'll throw this out there, and I'll let you all talk about maybe how you can convince people to do this otherwise. Is this some of those homes may be served with a subject to? I have a lot of subject to offers. And yes, the mortgage still stays in their name potentially, but the house goes, the subject to company takes over the payments. And there was another variation on that, some kind of like a trust, or subject to that goes into a trust, where I think the mortgage does come out of their name. It's a lot more complicated than a regular sale, and there is some degree of risk with all of that. But if you owe a gob of money and the house isn't worth that, it's better than, in my opinion, it's better than short selling it, or better than having to do that if you absolutely had to move. Like that big house, they lost their job. One of them lost their job.
Mhm.
They eventually got another job, but they fell behind 1 or 2 payments. But the sellers are very nervous. Like, I have a couple of them that would have been a good situation for, but they're just very nervous with the potential risk on the other side. So, what has your experience been on the subject to, or kind of a put the property in a trust type situation where it takes the basically someone else takes over the payments. They make a little bit of money. They may walk away with $15,000, and you get paid as the agent. Uh, and they're absolved of their responsibility. But potentially, that investor, if they did not make the payments, they could get the seller could foreclose back on the person who bought it, take the house back over in the future. So I'm not sure I understand fully the full effect of why an investor would want to do that. I know, and maybe Rob or Tony. I know Rob's super analytical, all of that stuff. Maybe he can explain a little bit better, like why. To me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense why you would want to take over someone's $4,600 a month rent mortgage payment when you can't even rent it for $4,600 a month, and what the end game is on that. But I'll be quiet and see. Has anybody else been getting a lot of offers? Just as we were on the phone, I just got a text on one of my properties for another one of those offers, and I'm getting them multiple times a day on some of these properties that have been, you know, um, like that one that we did go under contract, but that particular one, I've probably gotten 50 offers that are similar in some kind of iteration
Yeah.
to this, some kind of creative financing or creative buy on this particular, that expensive property, because they owe a lot, and they've only been out of it for like 2 years, and they bought at the height and selling at the where we're at now.
That's right.
I'd be,
Tony, are you seeing any of that? The subject to stuff?
yeah, I see things, but you, your due on sale clause inside the mortgage, you better be real careful, because if you do a
It's a risk.
subject to and they call that loan, they can call it, if you're not careful. I would be talking to a closing attorney, or,
Mhm.
attorney on staff with your closing attorney. Let them take a look at that mortgage. And if they find that due on sale clause in there and somebody's trying to do a subject to, and they let them assume it, or there's some sort of a transfer of the mortgage without the transfer of the title, something like that. I'd be real careful about those because they can call it with a due on sale clause.
Yeah, those are tricky. They can be called. I know most are not right now. They're not paying attention to them, but at any time the lender can call them. I think that's why they're using trust, because a seller, an owner, can transfer the property into trust without the permission of the lender. And then once it's in the trust, then they can sell the trust. So I think that's why they're using that to get around the due on sale clause. However, it's a huge risk for the seller on that. So I don't like them, but for somebody who's going to go foreclosure anyway, or I mean, it may be a way to get out of it. So an attorney has to look over this, because that can be very, very tricky. That's for sure. Kelly, I think you agree on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. I don't touch them without them. I tell them, you got to get an attorney.
Yeah.
I'm not getting in any hot water.
And normally that buyer will not deal with it if they find out you're bringing an attorney in, because they know that those due on sale clauses are in those mortgages.
We worked in the Chicago market, and we used to see them all the time, and it was synonymous with fraud. So we were we're still very skeptical. You would see it every day in Chicago, so it's like, nah, not interested. It just puts too much risk on the seller, in my opinion. But if you're willing to bring an attorney in to protect them, even then, I don't like it.
Yeah, that's a very risky. It's extremely risky because it doesn't happen a lot. Just almost like buying a home or for sale by owner. It's kind of like that. Like you put a sign up, try to do for sale by owner, and then you get lucky. You're like, oh, it's easy, right? But then when you go in there and you see how many people took over your home, and and you lost ownership and all kind of thing happening to the owner, right? And in this situation, same thing with the seller is very much as risk to the seller. So we, as agent, we got to protect them. Now, hey, I rather do just like Jamie said earlier, the short sale version, because that is a sure way that everybody is negotiated out from the bank, from the person, from the lender. So that way, that's no, when the due clause is calling, it's no big deal, right? But any other way for sub owner, I mean, and subject to all these stuff is very risky. Yeah, to the seller. So we have to be extremely careful of that. Yep. Well, guys, so anything else? Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Coach Kelly.
Oh,
The
I
only way
think
to get
Andy
that
was
to,
going to say something.
Oh, Andy,
Yeah.
my apologies.
yeah, the only way to get that to work for the seller is for them to get all their equity up front from the buyer. So, in other words, they won't have any more skin in the game, and any payment that comes in is just going directly to the bank. Because we got two of those wraparound offers just in the last couple of weeks. And I get the sense that maybe somebody's doing a webinar and it's creating a lot of interest. And all these people are trying to acquire properties using this technique. And our sellers
Yeah.
said no, because they want their equity. And these buyers, they don't want to bring all that equity to the table.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
what I wanted to say was that the original question was things that agents need to be looking at before the end of the year. I think it was something like that. But as agents, we all have to look at our numbers. We have to look at, how many phone calls does it take to acquire a contract? Because that number even has changed as the market has started to, I don't want to say decline, but it's softened. It's not what it was. So we have to also take a look at our business numbers. How much are we spending? What can we cut out? So there's a number of things. I know we're tasked with coming up with our marketing budget, and how much are we going to put back into the business versus how much are we going to pay ourselves? And so there's so many other things to look at besides the market numbers, but usually there's a number of how many contacts it takes especially for a seasoned agent versus a newer agent before they actually acquire a client. And so we have to pay attention to those numbers as well, because if we want to do our business on purpose, then we know those numbers. And those numbers are different for everyone. So I can make this many phone calls and I've converted half of them or a good portion of them, and someone else may only make two. Um, I'm terrific on the phones. Keith is terrific in person. He's more of a people person. He establishes rapport really quickly. And so you have to also take a look at that. Like, what are you doing in your business to going forward? And what do those numbers look like? How many contacts do you need to make? How many times do you need to get a hold of your SOI? I've got all these side conversations going on around me. Hopefully you can't hear them. But so those numbers are important as well, equally important as what's going on in the market, what's going on in your business, and what are you holding yourself accountable to going into 2026.
So yeah, the marching order for 2026 is learn to communicate, but more, and how do you learn to do that? By knowing all the numbers, all the facts, like, like as Jamie were summarizing it earlier, and we all kind of touching on that, you got to know, like Coach Kelly said, the absorption rate and knowing about, the new inventory and then the incentive that's going around, because a lot of time we're not only competing the new home, our existing home with new home, but the builder's incentive on top of the new homes. You hear that?
So
Yeah, go ahead.
so we don't have to worry about that. Our builders pay diddly and squat. You're lucky to get 1% from them. Now in Texas, we just did a new construction deal. They pay 5%. It was crazy.
Wow.
Here, you're not. You may get one. You may get none. And so we're constantly competing with to pull the buyers away from new construction and tell them don't go in there. So it's a whole different dynamic. Like we don't even deal with new construction if we want to get paid. We're taking them to a newer. So that house that is new in that community where someone lived 2 years, even though they're competing with new construction, agents are running out to that house versus the builder. So
Very cool.
it's a whole different dynamic here.
I would say one of the things I heard from Kim was gotta be discerning, meaning know your numbers. So if you walk into an unrealistic seller, you can make an informed decision if you're going to tie yourself to that or if you're going to walk out the door. If you don't know your numbers, you might, oh, I'm going to go ahead and do it and think like a couple of years ago, it'll sell anyway. It's not that market. So know your numbers so you can make good decisions and only take listings that are going to serve your purpose. You don't want to get tied with an albatross around your neck. Your reputation's going down and you got a headache, especially if the seller's a pain in the butt. So
Right.
you got to know your numbers so when you walk in, you can make an informed decision.
Yeah, put your information.
Well, and you can also take the numbers and you can use it in your social media. You can do a post about the numbers in your social media, what the days on market, what the absorption rate expires, and what's going on, the inventory levels. What's going on in different markets. You can take these statistics and create little blurbs about it on social media and become an educator. And that's what's hot right now in the social media world.
Yeah, for sure.
I see Keith doing that all the time.
All the time. He has the personality.
So
Pops up on my feed.
One of the things we've been doing that has really helped, because we talk about all these expires that are coming. Properties expire because of unmet expectations, or maybe expectations weren't set in the first place. And so one of the things that we've been doing is making sure we have that weekly communication with the seller. And that weekly communication involves not just calling them and saying, well, this is the feedback. It actually involves looking at the price every week. It actually involves looking at the competition, what's expired. And you can use a tool like ChatGPT to give you that data on a weekly basis. So you have something actually going out to them. And then you call them and explain, did you receive my email? And it also incorporates how many showings you had. It has that kind of stuff, but it's actually every week you're revisiting price instead of calling them, out the blue and say, oh, we need to lower the price. The last agent said your house wasn't worth it, and using that, but you're actually giving them the data that they need to make an informed decision. And when you do that on a weekly basis, you're not getting fired. You're getting, I have sellers call me and say, let's lower the price.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a mindset shift that agents think, oh, I'm just gonna, call them when we have feedback. You actually have to put that into and since we've done that, we don't have people talking about, him and Han. They can make their own decision. They're calling us in. Based on this, I need to drop the price. And of course, these are people that are motivated to sell. We all have those others, but we're talking about the people that will sell.
Yeah.
So when we talk about expiring, we don't want to be that statistic. We want to be the ones that are informing our clients. And ChatGPT does a terrific job, both once your property is listed and before, but you have to give it the right prompts. You have to ask it for the chronology of the property. I just did one where it told me I gave the seller's name and the address. That was it. And the prompt. And it gave me the history of that property. It even told me what the sellers did for a living, which
Really?
one of them didn't tell me he was a property manager. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, that was a good secret to keep from me. But anyway, it even told me that. It told me the whole history of the property, the area, what price to put it at. And we came in just lower than what the data suggested because the house needs some work and the state of the market is we're getting ahead of the market. So using those tools to actually give the right prompts, you can find out all the history of the area, the property, the amenities, everything before you get to the listing appointment. It takes me 5 minutes to prepare for my listing presentation now with ChatGPT. So I know this isn't the tech Zoom that we had a couple of weeks ago. I was doing some stuff and distracted and couldn't talk about it. But that's really where the industry is moving towards, where you can bring all that stuff in an instant, show up at your appointment, you're the smartest one in the room.
That's right. I love it.
Did you hear that? Say one more time, Coach Kelly.
Yeah. Be the smartest person in the room.
Because when you're done, not only your personality shine through, but your knowledge is what attract people to you. Like they really commending the present is your knowledge of the numbers, and that you're not there to try to get the listing. You're there to try to do them a favor. Like whether or not, I'm not sure if you're gonna list your home, but I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen and what the other agent gonna say and all this stuff. But here, what the market is talking about your home. So kind of like that. So
That's right.
that's an
Hey,
exciting call, guys. I love
great
it.
call, guys. Hey,
Yeah.
and remember, for the next 2 weeks, we're going to be off because of Christmas and New Year's. So we'll start back the first Monday in January.
January
Christmas.
5th.
Awesome.
Merry
Thanks,
Christmas,
guys.
everybody.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Merry
Have a great
Christmas.
end of the
Happy New
year.
Year.
We'll